Alright guys, today we're going to be taking a look at completing the square when we don't have a 1 in front of x squared. So completing the square when a does not equal 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and just dive into an example here. We'll talk about what happens. It's really just one subtle difference, right? So here we're going to have example 1. We've got 2x squared minus 20x plus 42 equals 0. Now you might look at this and say, all right, I can probably factor out a GCF of 2, and you can actually even factor it, right? But I don't want you to do that here because I really want you to practice this skill with something that's a little bit easy and not too distracting for us, all right? So here, we're going to follow the same step as before. So step 1, right, we want to get ax squared plus bx equals c, right? So that's going to be our first step. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to subtract 42 from each side. I end up with 2x squared minus 20x equals negative 42, okay? After we do that, we've got a new step, okay? So step 2, we're going to go ahead, we're going to factor a on the left. So whatever a is, we have to factor it on the left. So over here, I'm going to factor out this 2. I'm going to be left with x squared minus 10x, right, equals negative 42, okay? So that's the very important step there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, we're going to add in our blanks, right? So we put our blanks in. So plus blank, right, plus blank, okay? Now here to fill in the blank, we know how to do that. That's going to be our complete the square step, right? So here we're going to actually complete the square. So here I say to myself, half of negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5. Negative 5 squared is 25, okay? I'm going to go ahead and put a star here. This is where it's different, okay? So here we put 25 over here, but by adding 25 to this side of the equation, what is the net effect? Well, if we take a look here, this 2 would distribute to every term here. So by putting 25 on this line, what we've actually done is we've added 50, because 2 times 25 is 50. So if we add 50 to one side, make sure you add 50 to the other side as well, okay? Very important step there, all right? After we do that, it becomes pretty much like the rest of the problem, right? So here's step 5. We're going to factor the left and simplify the right. All right, so over here, I'm going to bring the 2 down. This is going to factor nicely to be x minus 5 squared. And then over on the other side, I've got negative 42 plus 50, which is 8. Okay? Very important here, right? Please remember, whatever you do here, this sign will always match that sign. A lot of you are going from this and saying x plus 5, minus, minus. They have to match, okay? Now it's going to be straightforward, just solving, right? So step 6, I'm just going to go ahead and solve. So go back to pink since we cycled through all our colors. So we're going to go ahead and solve for x. So here I'm going to divide each side by 2. All right, these cancel. I'm left with x minus 5 squared equals 4. All right. Now here, I take the square root of each side. I end up with x minus 5 equals plus or minus 2. Make sure you're not missing the plus or minus 2. All right. Now I can go ahead and I can solve for x. Okay. So I'm going to break it up into 2 cases because I can see here it's going to be an integer. So I've got x minus 5 equals 2. And I've got x minus 5 equals negative 2. I'll add 5 to each side. And I get x equals 7, and x equals 3. Okay, so my solution here is going to be x equals 7 and 3. Okay, so that's how we complete the square. All right, we're going to take a look at another one. It's going to have a GCF, but we're going to ignore the GCF for now. And then we're going to go ahead, and this one's going to have a radical in the solution. Okay, so let's take a look at one more. Well, two more actually, three more actually. So here, example 2, we've got 3x squared plus 12x minus 27 equals 0. All right. Now this one you could factor out a GCF. You could divide everything by 3, but we're not going to do that, right? We want to practice this skill. So here, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move the 27 to the other side. So I end up with 3x squared plus 12x equals 27. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to factor out that 3. So I get 3 times x squared plus 4x equals 27. Now I'm going to go ahead and fill in the blanks. Plus blank plus blank. Half of 4 is 2. 2 squared is 4. So I'm going to put a 4 on this line, which is the same as 4 times 3, 12. Okay, don't forget that step. Now I'm going to factor the left. I get 3x plus 2, the quantity squared, equals 39. All right. We're going to divide each side by 3. We get x plus 2, the quantity squared, equals 13. We're going to take the square root of each side. We get x plus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 13. Now here, we can see I'm going to get a radical answer because I can't simplify the square root of 13, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply subtract 2 here, subtract 2 there, right? And what I end up with is x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 13. All right? So that's one's a lot more concise, you can see, when we're not necessarily showing each of the algebraic steps, but we're still doing all of our work. All right? Let's go ahead and take a look at another example, number 4. Now this is the first one where we're going to see that a GCF would not work. Okay? When we do that, we're going to end up with some fractions, but that's okay. For now, I'm going to keep it pretty simple for you guys. We've got 2x squared plus 8x minus 5 equals 0. You can see these are not all divisible by 2, right? 2 does not go into negative 5. All right? So what we're going to do is we're still going to start by moving 5 to the other side. So we get 2x squared plus 8x. I add 5 to each side. 0 plus 5 is 5. I factor out the 2 on the left. So I get 2 times x squared plus 4x plus blank equals 5 plus blank. We're going to complete the square. Half of 4 is 2. 2 squared is 4. By putting a 4 here, I'm actually adding 4 times 2, which is 8. Okay. We factor the left now. We've got 2 times x plus 2 squared equals 13. We're going to divide each side by 2. We get x plus 2 squared equals 13 halves. Okay. We're going to take the square root of each side. We get x plus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 13 halves. All right. Now you guys know from Algebra 2 you can't actually leave this as a fraction, right? We're going to have to rationalize that denominator. I'm not worried about that today, so don't worry about that either. I'll subtract 2 here. I'll subtract 2 there. I end up with x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 13 halves. All right. If you want to go through the work, you can do that, right? So here, if we've got the square root of 13 over 2, we can break that up as square root of 13 over square root of 2. We'd multiply top and bottom by square root of 2, right? And we would get the square root of 26 over 2. All right. So technically this answer would be -2 plus or minus the square root of 26 over a rational 2. Okay. But here, I'm okay with this for now. That was example 3. I don't know why I numbered it number 4. Should have been 3. Just getting super excited about example 4, I guess. All right, so we're going to take a look at one more example. It's going to be number 4. All right. So we've got this one. We have negative 3x squared minus 18x plus 7 equals 0. All right, now here, again, 3 does not go into 7, so I can't factor out the 3. I can't just divide everything by 3. What I can do is, because it's a negative, I can change the sign of everything. Or I can choose to add 3x squared and add 18x to the other side. It doesn't really matter. If you prefer positive numbers, that's perfectly fine with me. I'm going to do this one with a negative. I'm just going to leave it here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to subtract 7 from each side. I get negative 3x squared minus 18x equals negative 7. I'm going to factor out a negative 3. We've got negative 3 times x squared plus 6x plus blank equals negative 7 plus blank. Okay. Now here, half of 6 is 3. 3 squared is 9. So by putting a 9 here, I've actually added negative 3 times 9, negative 27. Okay. So here, I end up with negative 3 times x plus 3 squared equals negative 7 plus negative 27 is negative 34. I'm going to divide each side by negative 3. I end up with x plus 3 squared equals, and we'll just leave it as 34 thirds. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. Take the square root of each side. End up with x plus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 34 thirds. Okay. I'll go ahead and subtract 3 here, subtract 3 here, and then just to continue, I end up with x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 34 thirds. And you can leave it like that. If you want to clean it up, you'd multiply top and bottom by root 3, and you would get negative 3 plus or minus 102, so square root of 102 over 3. All right, so this one, like I said, is fine for today. If you give me that one, it's even better. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of these problems for homework tonight. It's going to be a Canvas quiz just like before. Please make sure you're uploading all of your work. If I don't see all of the problems, you are not getting all of the credit on the work. Please also make sure you're following the indicated method. Even if you can solve it by factoring, make sure you're completing the square.